my husband said, I'm taking a 2-week trip to find myself, with my first love from high school. I told him, that's nice. I hope you find what you're looking for. While he was gone, I packed my own bags and left. When he came back, his messages filled my phone. Turns out I found myself first. I'm taking a 2-week trip to find myself, with Katie, my first love from high school. Benjamin stood in our bedroom doorway at exactly 4 p.m. that Sunday, delivering these words with the practiced ease of someone who'd rehearsed them in the bathroom mirror. I held his blue Oxford shirt in my hands mid-fold, watching his face cycle through emotions he couldn't quite control: anticipation, guilt, and something that looked dangerously close to relief. 9 years. That's how long I'd been folding this exact shirt, every Sunday, placing it third from the left in his closet because that's where he expected it. 9 years of invisible routines that held our marriage together like carefully placed stitches nobody ever noticed until they started coming undone. Before we continue, if you believe everyone deserves the chance to find themselves on their own terms, not someone else's, please consider subscribing. It's free and helps these stories reach more people. Now let's see how Abigail's Sunday unfolds. The morning had started like every Sunday before it. My internal clock woke me at 6:30, no alarm needed. Benjamin would sleep until 8, he always did on weekends, but his coffee needed to be ready by 8:15 when he'd stumble downstairs expecting it to materialize like magic. 2 sugars, splash of cream in his favorite mug with the chipped handle he refused to throw away. I moved through our kitchen in the darkness, my bare feet knowing every creak in the floorboards, avoiding the spot near the refrigerator that groaned if you stepped wrong. The coffee maker gurgled to life while I pulled ingredients for breakfast from their designated spots. Benjamin liked his eggs over easy, toast golden but not too crispy, bacon arranged just so on his plate. These weren't requests he'd made. They were preferences I'd absorbed through years of paying attention to his smallest reactions. The slight frown when toast was too dark, the way he'd push eggs aside if the yolks were too firm. By 7 a.m. I was in our bedroom sorting laundry with the efficiency of someone who could do it blindfolded. Whites, darks, delicates, each pile growing on our bed while Benjamin slept, oblivious. His breathing was deep and even, occasionally punctuated by soft snores he insisted he didn't make. I studied him in the morning light filtering through our curtains, the way his hair stuck up on the left side, the new lines around his eyes, the slack expression that made him look younger, almost vulnerable. This was my favorite part of Sunday mornings, these quiet moments before the performance of marriage began. Before I had to laugh at jokes I'd heard 100 times, before I had to pretend interest in his commentary about whatever game was on TV, before I had to be the version of Abigail that made Benjamin's life run smoothly. The banana bread I'd baked yesterday still filled our house with its warm sweetness. Benjamin would have 2 slices with his breakfast, then forget I'd made it by lunchtime. These small acts of love had become reflexes, things I did without thinking, like breathing or blinking. He never thanked me anymore. Hadn't in years, but I told myself that marriage was about the unspoken appreciation, the quiet understanding between 2 people who'd built a life together. Our monthly brunch with Sarah and Tom was at noon. I'd picked the restaurant, made the reservation, reminded Benjamin twice during the week and once more this morning. Sarah had been my best friend since college, the only person who'd known me before I became Benjamin's wife, back when I had opinions that didn't require checking his face first to gauge his mood. At the restaurant, Benjamin ordered for me without asking. She'll have the spinach salad dressing on the side, even though I'd been craving the French toast I'd seen at another table. I smiled and said nothing, a skill I'd perfected over the years. So I was dealing with this student, Marcus, who's been struggling with reading. I started, excited to share a breakthrough I'd had with him on Friday. He finally. Did you see the game last night? Benjamin cut in, turning to Tom. That fourth quarter was insane. I stopped mid-sentence, my words evaporating like steam. This was our rhythm. I'd start, he'd redirect, I'd fade into background noise. Anyway, Benjamin continued 20 minutes later, as if remembering I existed, what were you saying about your student? But the moment had passed. I summarized in 2 sentences what had been a 5-minute story, watching Benjamin's eyes glaze over before he flagged the waiter for more coffee. Sarah followed me to the bathroom after our meals arrived. Does he always do that? She asked, fixing her lipstick in the mirror. Do what? Interrupt you. Dismiss you. Act like your stories are intermissions between his real conversations. I wanted to defend him, to explain that Benjamin was just enthusiastic, that he didn't mean anything by it. But the words wouldn't come. Instead, I noticed, really noticed, how Sarah's husband had stood when she left the table, how he'd asked her opinion about the wine, how he'd been genuinely interested when she talked about her work. "He's tired," I said finally. "Work's been stressful." Sarah met my eyes in the mirror. "Abby, when's the last time he asked about your day and actually listened to the answer?" The question hung between us like an accusation. I couldn't remember. Back home, Benjamin disappeared into his phone, sprawled on our couch with the TV playing in the background. Every few minutes he'd chuckle at something on his screen, occasionally angling it toward me to show a meme I didn't understand or a video I didn't find funny. "Remember Katie Walsh?" he asked suddenly, showing me a Facebook photo. A blonde woman smiled from a hiking trail, all toned arms and genuine happiness. From high school. Yeah. She just got divorced. Really found herself, you know? Started this whole journey of self-discovery. Hiking, meditation, all that stuff. He scrolled through more of her photos with an intensity that made my chest tight. "We should get hiking boots," he said. "Start being more active." But I knew he meant himself. In 9 years, Benjamin had never once suggested we exercise together until now. Until Katie Walsh's divorce status update had apparently awakened something in him. I noticed other changes too. The teeth whitening strips that appeared in our bathroom. The cologne I hadn't smelled since our dating days. The gym membership he'd suddenly started using after 3 years of paying for nothing. The way he'd started examining himself in mirrors, sucking in his stomach, running his hands through his thinning hair. By 3:30 I was back in our bedroom folding the laundry that had been washed and dried while we were out. Benjamin's shirts required specific attention. Collar flat, sleeves crossed, third button fastened. My hands moved automatically through the familiar motions while my mind wandered to Sarah's question. When had Benjamin last asked about my day? When had he last noticed I'd cleaned the house, made his favorite dinner, remembered to buy the specific brand of cereal he liked? When had I become invisible in my own marriage? That's when Benjamin appeared in the doorway and I knew, the way you know a storm is coming by the change in air pressure, that our carefully constructed Sunday routine was about to shatter. "I need to tell you something important, Abigail." His voice carried a weight that made me look up from his shirt. Benjamin never called me Abigail anymore. I was always Abby, Abs, or just Han, when he needed something. But Abigail? That was reserved for serious conversations, the kind that changed things. "I'm taking a 2-week trip to find myself," he said, then added as if it were a minor detail, "with Katie. My first love from high school." The shirt in my hands went still. I waited for more. An explanation, an apology, something that would make this make sense. But Benjamin just stood there, shifting his weight like a teenager who'd asked to borrow the car, waiting for my response to determine his next move. The words hung in our bedroom air like smoke from a blown-out candle. I looked down at Benjamin's blue Oxford, smoothed a wrinkle that wasn't there, and heard myself speak with a voice so steady it surprised us both. "That's nice. I hope you find what you're looking for." Benjamin's mouth opened, then closed, then opened again. He'd rehearsed this moment. I could see it in the way his hands had been positioned for defense, ready to deflect tears or anger or the vase on our dresser. But I kept folding, creating a perfect crease along the sleeve, my movements deliberate and calm. You're not upset?" "Why would I be upset?" I placed his shirt on the bed with the others, each one aligned like soldiers. "You clearly need this. We all deserve to find ourselves, don't we?" The confusion on his face shifted through so many expressions I almost laughed. Relief washed over him first, followed immediately by suspicion, as if my calm response was a trap he hadn't prepared for. Then came something else. Disappointment, maybe? Had he wanted me to fight? To prove his importance by falling apart? "Abby, you're amazing." He rushed forward, kissing my forehead with more enthusiasm than he'd shown in months. His lips were dry, and he smelled like the new cologne that had appeared on his dresser last week. "This is why I married you. You understand me. You get me." The words settled into my chest like stones. Not, "I love you." Not, "You're the best thing in my life." Just that I understood him, made his choices easier, enabled his comfort. I was a feature in his life like our dishwasher or the navigation system in his car. Useful, reliable, requiring minimal maintenance. "You should get proper hiking gear," I said, turning back to the laundry basket. Colorado weather can be unpredictable in the mountains. Maybe those moisture-wicking shirts they sell at REI. Right? Yes. I was thinking the same thing. His voice carried the manic energy of a child who'd gotten away with something. Katie says the elevation can be tough if you're not prepared. Katie says. Already she was the authority, the guide to his new authentic life. Monday morning arrived with Benjamin transformed into someone I'd never seen before. He'd taken the week off work, something he'd never done for our anniversaries or my birthday, to prepare for his journey of self-discovery. Our credit card statements would later show the damage. $300 hiking boots he'd wear exactly twice, $150 worth of meditation apps and audiobooks about finding your true self, athletic wear that cost more than my entire teaching wardrobe. Look at these reviews, he said, shoving his phone in my face over breakfast. The Colorado retreat looked like something from a wellness magazine. Mountain views, luxury cabins, yoga platforms overlooking valleys. It's supposed to be transformative. Transformative, I repeated, spreading jam on my toast. That's wonderful. The price at the bottom of the screen made my stomach clench. $3,000 for 2 weeks. More than our mortgage. More than we'd spent on our 5th anniversary trip to Florida, which Benjamin had complained about for months afterward. It's an investment, he said, apparently noticing my pause. In ourselves. In our future. Our future. While planning a trip with another woman. Tuesday he came home with bags from 3 different outdoor stores. He modeled each outfit like a teenager trying on personas, asking my opinion about which colors would look best in photos. I suggested the blue hiking shirt. It would bring out his eyes in mountain sunlight. He beamed at me as if I'd given him permission for something much larger than fashion advice. Wednesday evening I helped him pack. It was almost peaceful, this careful folding and organizing, like preparing for any other trip except for the constant mentions of Katie's preferences. Katie says we should pack light. Katie thinks morning hikes are more spiritual. Katie believes in digital detoxing, so I might not have phone service. Each mention of her name was a small cut, but I'd learned to stop feeling them individually. They accumulated instead into a general numbness, like emotional Novocaine. These shirts will photograph well, I said, folding his new hiking clothes with the same precision I'd given his work shirts for 9 years. The fabric won't show sweat as much. Benjamin looked at me with something close to awe. How are you so perfect about this? Perfect. As if my response to betrayal was a performance to be graded. Thursday morning Sarah insisted on coffee. She'd been texting since Sunday, clearly sensing something was wrong. We met at our usual place, a small cafe downtown where the barista knew our orders and the corner booth was always saved for us until 11 a.m. Sarah didn't bother with small talk. The moment we sat down, she grabbed my hand hard enough that her wedding ring pressed into my palm. He's literally telling you he's going on a romantic getaway with another woman. It's a journey of self-discovery, I corrected, stirring sugar into my coffee with mechanical precision. Stop it. Stop pretending this is normal. I'm supporting my husband's growth, I said, meeting her eyes with a smile that felt painted on. Isn't that what wives do? Sarah studied my face like she was trying to decode a message written in a foreign language. Her expression shifted from concern to confusion to something that looked like understanding. She leaned back in her chair, eyes widening. Abigail Thompson, what are you planning? I'm planning to be the supportive wife Benjamin deserves. Something in my tone, maybe the way I emphasized deserves, made her release my hand. A slow smile spread across her face, the kind she used to get in college when she figured out a professor's trick question before everyone else. How long have you been planning? I don't know what you mean. Abby. She leaned forward, lowering her voice. I've known you for 15 years. You organized your revenge on Chelsea Morrison in sophomore year for 3 months before anyone knew she'd stolen your thesis idea. This calm act. This perfect wife routine. You're planning something. I took a sip of coffee, letting the warmth settle in my chest. Benjamin needs to find himself. I think it's important to give him the space to do that. Sarah's grin widened. Oh my God. You're really going to do it. Do what? Whatever it is you're planning. And it's going to be spectacular. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us remembering the woman I'd been before Benjamin. Organized, decisive, taking no nonsense from anyone. Sarah had watched that woman slowly disappear under layers of compromise and accommodation. Now, something in my expression must have told her that woman was stirring awake. That evening, while Benjamin modeled his new hiking clothes in our bedroom mirror, admiring himself from different angles, I moved through our house with my phone, documenting everything. The kitchen appliances I'd purchased with my teaching bonuses. The furniture bought with my grandmother's inheritance. The artwork given by my family. 9 years of accumulation, and I could trace almost every valuable item back to my own money, my own choices. Benjamin was too absorbed in his reflection to notice. He'd convinced himself that this transformation, these clothes, this trip, this Katie, would reveal his authentic self. He practiced different smiles in the mirror, probably imagining how he'd look in Katie's Instagram photos. "Do these pants make me look younger?" he asked, turning to show me his profile. "You look like yourself," I said, which wasn't really an answer but satisfied him anyway. That night, after Benjamin had fallen asleep still wearing his new hiking socks, I sat in our living room with my laptop, looking at the apartment I'd rented 3 months ago. Just a quiet backup plan, I told myself then. Insurance against the growing distance in our marriage. The landlord had been understanding about my request for discretion, perhaps recognizing something in my expression that suggested a familiar story. The apartment was small but bright, with windows that actually opened and a kitchen that got morning sunlight. I'd furnished it slowly, carefully, telling Benjamin I was donating items to charity or helping Sarah redecorate. A chair here, a lamp there, books I claimed were going to my classroom library. It had been waiting patiently, like a life raft I'd built while still convincing myself the ship wasn't sinking. Friday morning arrived with the kind of bright sunshine that felt like the universe was in on my secret. Benjamin had been awake since 5 a.m., checking and rechecking his bags, arranging his new hiking clothes in order of planned outfits. He moved through our house like a hurricane of anticipation, barely able to contain the energy radiating from every gesture. I made his coffee one last time, 2 sugars, splash of cream, and watched him gulp it down without tasting it. His phone buzzed constantly with text notifications, each one making him smile in a way that twisted something deep in my chest. Not jealousy exactly, more like watching a stranger use your favorite mug. "The Uber will be here in 10 minutes, he announced, though I hadn't asked. He was already dressed for Colorado, new hiking pants, moisture-wicking shirt, boots that squeaked with each step. He looked like a mannequin from an outdoor store, playing dress-up as someone adventurous. When the car pulled up outside, Benjamin grabbed his bags with the eagerness of a kid heading to summer camp. At the door he paused, seeming to remember he had a wife to say goodbye to. The kiss he placed on my forehead was weightless, already somewhere else before his lips even touched my skin. "I'll come back renewed," he promised, his hand already on the doorknob. "Ready to rebuild our marriage stronger than ever." The words sounded rehearsed, something he'd probably read in one of his self-help audiobooks. Before I could respond, his phone rang. Katie's name flashed on the screen and his entire face transformed. "Hey. Yes, I'm leaving now." His voice pitched higher with excitement as he walked toward the Uber, forgetting to close our front door behind him. "The airport shuttle?" "Yeah, Terminal B. Can't wait to." I closed the door softly, listening to his animated conversation fade as the car pulled away. Through the kitchen window, I watched the Uber disappear around the corner, Benjamin visible through the back window, gesturing wildly as he talked, lost in whatever Katie was saying. The silence that followed felt different than usual. Not empty but expectant, like the pause before a symphony begins. I walked to our coffee maker, the expensive one I'd bought with my birthday money last year, and made myself a cup of the good coffee. The Ethiopian blend I usually saved for company, grinding the beans fresh, taking time with each step. Benjamin preferred the cheap pre-ground stuff anyway. 20 minutes later, Sarah's car pulled into our driveway with strategic precision. She emerged carrying cardboard boxes and 2 bottles of wine, her expression somewhere between accomplice and party planner. "Liberation Day," she announced, pushing past me into the house. I brought reinforcements. Before I could ask what she meant, Tom's truck appeared, followed immediately by a U-Haul with my sister Lisa behind the wheel. She must have left Dallas at 4 a.m. to get here this quickly. Lisa climbed out wearing oversized sunglasses and a grin that reminded me of when we were kids planning midnight raids on our parents' hidden Christmas presents. "You didn't think I'd miss this, did you?" She pulled me into a hug that smelled like her signature vanilla perfume and the Red Bull she'd probably consumed on the drive. I made a playlist. It's called Freedom Sounds Better. What I'd imagined as a quiet, methodical process transformed into something else entirely. Tom immediately took charge of logistics, measuring furniture and calculating truck space with an engineer's precision. Lisa connected her phone to our speakers, filling the house with a carefully curated selection of empowerment anthems and breakup songs that somehow made me laugh instead of cry. Sarah stationed herself in the kitchen with a label maker, creating increasingly creative categories. Books Benjamin pretended to read, kitchen stuff he couldn't identify, actual art versus his sports posters. By noon, the atmosphere had shifted from moving day to celebration. Tom popped champagne he'd apparently brought for this exact purpose, pouring it into my grandmother's crystal glasses that Benjamin had always wanted to sell. To Abigail, he toasted, for finally choosing herself. We clinked glasses in my half-empty living room, sunlight streaming through windows that looked bigger without Benjamin's oversized entertainment center blocking half the wall. Mrs. Chin from next door appeared around 12:30 with a tray of sandwiches and a knowing look. I saw Benjamin leave with designer luggage for hiking, she said, setting the food on our kitchen counter. My husband had the same luggage when he left me for his secretary 15 years ago. Men are not creative creatures. She squeezed my hand, her eyes holding the understanding of someone who'd walked this path before. You need help? My grandson has strong back. As we packed, the truth of my marriage became visible in what belonged to whom. The coffee maker, the one Benjamin bragged about to his friends? My money. The memory foam mattress topper that finally helped my back pain? My purchase after Benjamin declared it an unnecessary expense. The kitchen supplies I'd carefully collected from estate sales and restaurant supply stores? All mine while he complained about the cost of takeout. My grandmother's china, which he'd called too fussy, and suggested we sell. Wrapped carefully in bubble wrap by Sarah, who remembered eating off these plates at my college graduation dinner. Look at this, Lisa said, standing in what was now obviously Benjamin's corner of our living room. His contributions stood out in their absence of taste. The recliner that didn't match anything, the enormous TV he'd insisted we needed, the exercise bike that had held more laundry than it ever had him. 9 years, I said quietly, looking at how easily our life divided into mine and his. 9 years and everything worth keeping fits in one truck. Tom loaded boxes with practiced efficiency while Sarah continued her labeling system, now adding commentary. Abby's grandmother's silver that Benjamin tried to pawn, photo albums pre-Benjamin when Abby smiled genuinely. Lisa documented everything with her phone, creating what she called evidence of liberation. Photos of me actually laughing as we discovered Benjamin's secret stash of protein powder that expired in 2019, videos of Sarah dramatically reading the motivational quotes he'd taped to our bathroom mirror. By 3 p.m. the truck was loaded. Our house, his house now, looked strange with half its contents gone, like a smile missing teeth. But instead of sad, it felt honest. This was what Benjamin had contributed to our life together. Empty space and ugly furniture. I stood at his sock drawer with a pen and paper, choosing my words carefully. The note needed to be perfect. Not cruel, not dramatic, just true. I wrote it twice, then a third time until the words felt right. Benjamin, I took your advice and found myself. Turns out I was here all along, just buried under 9 years of being who you needed me to be. The divorce papers are with your attorney. I hope Katie helps you find whatever you're looking for. You deserve each other. Abigail. I folded it once, placed it between his hiking socks and his dress socks, where he'd find it only after the initial panic of discovery had passed. Lisa waited by the door as I took one last walk through the house. Each room held memories, but they felt like photographs of someone else's life now. The kitchen where I'd cooked thousands of meals he barely noticed. The living room where we'd sat together but separately, him lost in his phone while I read books he never asked about. The bedroom where we'd slept side by side like strangers who happened to share a lease. I locked the door with my key for the last time, sliding it under the mat where we'd always kept the spare. The click of the lock felt final, satisfying, like the last piece of a puzzle sliding into place. The convoy of vehicles pulled away from Benjamin's house, my former house, like a funeral procession in reverse, heading toward life instead of away from it. Lisa drove the U-Haul while I sat in the passenger seat, watching familiar streets transform into new territory. Sarah and Tom followed in their car, turning our escape into something that felt less like running and more like graduating. My apartment building stood on a tree-lined street downtown, far enough from our old neighborhood that I wouldn't accidentally run into Benjamin at the grocery store. The afternoon sun caught the windows of my third-floor unit, making them glow like promises. As we pulled into the parking area, I felt my phone vibrate. Without looking, I knew Benjamin had started discovering Katie's real expectations for their spiritual journey. "Home sweet home," Lisa said, pulling the U-Haul to a stop. "Your new life starts now." We worked like a choreographed team. Tom and his brother, summoned via text for heavy lifting, handled furniture. Sarah directed traffic with her label system, ensuring everything landed in its designated room. Lisa kept the music going and the mood light, occasionally holding up items for group judgment. "Keep or toss?" she asked, displaying a wedding photo from my dresser. "Keep," I said, surprising myself. "But in storage." Evidence of my temporary insanity. By early evening, the bones of my new life were in place. The apartment smelled like cardboard and possibility. My grandmother's china sat in kitchen cabinets that caught evening light. Her rocking chair fit perfectly by the window, angled to watch sunsets I'd actually have time to notice now. Sarah opened wine while Tom assembled my bed frame, the one I'd bought last year when Benjamin complained our mattress was too soft, though he'd never contributed to purchasing a new one. Lisa hung pictures, deliberately placing them at my eye level instead of Benjamin's taller preference. "A toast," Tom announced once the major pieces were in place, raising his beer. "To Abigail for having the courage to choose herself." We drank surrounded by boxes, sitting on my grandmother's rug that Benjamin had wanted to replace with something less old-fashioned. The apartment felt like wearing clothes that actually fit after years of squeezing into someone else's preferences. After everyone left, promising to return tomorrow for phase 2, I stood alone in my new space. That's when it hit me, a wave of grief so powerful I had to grab the kitchen counter for support. But it wasn't Benjamin I was mourning. I was grieving the woman who'd spent 9 years folding someone else's laundry with religious devotion. The woman who'd turned down a position as department head because Benjamin needed dinner at 6 sharp. The woman who'd stopped painting because the spare room had to be his home office, then his gym, then his storage space for exercise equipment he never used. The tears came suddenly, violently. I slid down the kitchen wall until I was sitting on the floor, sobbing for possibilities that had died quiet deaths. The children we never had because Benjamin wasn't ready, then because the timing wasn't right, then because he needed to find himself first. The art classes I'd skipped because weekends were for his golf games. The friendship with my college roommate that faded because Benjamin found her too feminist. Lisa found me there an hour later, having returned with forgotten items from her car. She didn't ask questions, just sat beside me on the kitchen floor, holding me while I cried for the woman I'd been, not because I wanted her back, but because she deserved better than she'd known to ask for. "I wasted 9 years, I whispered into her shoulder. "No," Lisa said firmly. "You learned for 9 years. Now you know exactly who you don't want to be." The tears eventually stopped, leaving me empty but somehow cleaner. Lisa helped me up, made me tea in my own kitchen using my own kettle and my own cup. We sat at my small dining table, the one I'd bought at an estate sale that Benjamin called depressing, and watched the city lights come alive outside my window. "I'm proud of you," Lisa said quietly. "I've been waiting for you to come back to us." That night, I slept diagonal across my bed, sprawling into space that had always been his. The silence felt different here. Not lonely but full, like a blank canvas waiting for paint. Sunday arrived with 17 emails from Benjamin. I didn't open them, but Sarah screenshotted each one for documentation purposes, and couldn't resist sharing highlights over morning coffee. "Listen to this," she said, reading from her phone. "How could you abandon our home? Our home? The man who couldn't remember when trash day was suddenly cares about our home." The emails progressed from confusion to anger to bargaining in record time. "Where are you?" became, "This is insane," became, "We need to talk like adults," became, "Please just call me." Monday brought the Facebook post. Benjamin, who'd always mocked social media as attention-seeking, suddenly discovered its appeal. He posted vague statements about betrayal and life's unexpected challenges, clearly fishing for sympathy without providing actual details. Sometimes the person you trust most becomes a stranger, Sarah read aloud from his profile. The comments are amazing. Look, his coworker asked if he's okay and he responded with, I'm learning that not everyone deserves your loyalty. The man who left you for another woman is talking about loyalty. Our mutual friends started reaching out to me privately. I kept my responses simple and factual. Benjamin went on a journey of self-discovery with another woman. I gave him the space he needed. The truth required no embellishment. Tuesday morning, my phone exploded with forwarded Instagram stories. 3 different acquaintances sent me the same video, each with variations of, you need to see this, and laughing emojis. Katie Walsh, looking nothing like her filtered Facebook photos, stood in what appeared to be the Colorado Retreats parking lot. Her blonde hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and her expression murderous. I need everyone to know, she announced to her phone camera, that Benjamin Mitchell is a lying narcissist who told me his marriage was over. He said his wife knew about us reconnecting. He said she supported this journey. The next clip showed her inside what looked like a hotel room, Benjamin's new hiking gear visible in the background. This pathological liar had me believing we were both divorced, both free to explore our connection. Then I called to add my name to the reservation and guess what? It's under Mr. and Ms. Mitchell. The final video was cinematic gold. Katie stood by a mountain creek, holding Benjamin's pristine hiking boots, the ones he'd spent 3 hours selecting. You want to find yourself, Ben? She shouted at the camera before launching the boots into the water. Find yourself single. The boots disappeared downstream while Katie narrated about midlife crisis cliches and men who couldn't grow up. By Tuesday afternoon, the video had over 10,000 views. Someone had added it to our high school's alumni Facebook page with the caption, "Remember when these two dated junior year? Some things never change." Wednesday, I was arranging my classroom for afternoon art period when Sarah's husband Tom texted, "You'll never guess who I just picked up from the airport." His play-by-play updates came in real time. Benjamin, returning 11 days early from his transformative 2-week journey, spent the entire ride from the airport ranting about ungrateful wives and psychotic ex-girlfriends. He seemed to believe Katie had lost her mind over nothing, and that I'd completely overreacted to a simple vacation. Tom texted, "He just said you're probably at your sister's crying into wine. Should I tell him?" "No," I replied. "Let him find out himself." The final text came at 3:47 p.m. Just dropped him off. He's about to discover what finding yourself really costs. Mrs. Chun called me that evening, her voice mixing scandal with satisfaction. "Your husband sat on front lawn crying like baby," she reported. "Screaming at phone, pulling his hair. Very dramatic. My grandson filmed for his TikTok. The image of Benjamin, controlled, composed Benjamin, falling apart on the lawn he'd obsessed over maintaining was almost too perfect." Thursday morning arrived with my phone ringing at exactly 7:15 a.m., Patricia Mitchell's preferred time for what she called handling unpleasant business. I recognized the number but let it ring 3 times before answering, giving myself time to center my breathing. "Abigail." Her voice cut through the line like a blade wrapped in velvet. "What you've done to my son is unforgivable." I sat at my small kitchen table watching morning light paint shadows across my new apartment walls. Patricia had always wielded her disapproval like a weapon at family dinners, making comments about my cooking, my career, my inability to give her grandchildren on her timeline. "Good morning to you too, Patricia. Don't you dare take that tone with me. You've humiliated Benjamin. Publicly. The entire neighborhood is talking about how you abandoned him." "He left for Colorado with another woman," I said, stirring honey into my tea. "I simply relocated while he was gone. It was a camping trip." Her voice climbed an octave. "A innocent reunion with an old friend. You've blown this completely out of proportion." I almost laughed. Patricia had spent 9 years telling me I was too sensitive, too emotional, too everything. Now she wanted me to be understanding about her son's 2-week getaway with his high school girlfriend? "Patricia," I said slowly, "your 40-year-old son ran off with his ex-girlfriend for a spiritual awakening. That's not camping. That's a midlife crisis with a side of adultery. How dare you?" He told me himself. Katie Walsh. His first love. The one who got away. I quoted Benjamin's exact words back to her. He needed to find himself with her in Colorado. Those were his words, not mine. The silence that followed was so complete I could hear her breathing change. Patricia Mitchell, who had an answer for everything, who'd spent years subtly undermining me at every family gathering, had nothing to say. "I'm calling the police," she finally managed. "You've stolen from him. That's theft. I took my grandmother's china, my clothes and furniture I purchased with my own money. If Benjamin wants to discuss ownership, he can contact my lawyer." "Your lawyer?" She sounded genuinely shocked. "You've already involved lawyers? After everything we've done for you? Everything they'd done for me? Like the Christmas Patricia gave everyone else thoughtful gifts but handed me a weight loss book. Or the birthday dinner where she seated me at the children's table because someone needs to watch them. Or the countless times she'd introduced me as Benjamin's wife, without using my name, as if I was a position rather than a person. Patricia, I need to go. I have a class to teach." "This isn't over," she warned. "I'll make sure everyone knows what kind of woman you really are." "They already know what kind of woman I am," I said. "I'm the kind who refuses to be anyone's backup plan." I hung up before she could respond, my hands surprisingly steady. Friday afternoon brought a different Mitchell to my phone. David, the successful brother, the lawyer who'd made partner before 30 and never let anyone forget it. His name on my screen meant Patricia had deployed her best weapon. "Abigail," he began, using what Benjamin called his courtroom voice. "I think we should discuss this situation rationally." "Hello, David. Look, I understand you're upset. Ben made a mistake. But this response seems extreme." I put him on speaker while I graded art projects, my students' creativity spreading across my dining table in explosions of color and imagination. "Which part seems extreme? The part where I moved out while he was with another woman? Or the part where I hired a lawyer? The part where you're destroying my brother over a simple misunderstanding?" "A misunderstanding," I repeated, adding a gold star to Mackenzie's watercolor. "Is that what we're calling it? Ben says you gave him permission to go. That you understood he needed space." I told him I hoped he found what he was looking for. And he did. Consequences. David sighed heavily, the sound of a man used to winning arguments realizing he'd already lost this one. "Abigail, be reasonable. You know Ben's always been searching. Remember Thanksgiving 2 years ago? When he spent the entire dinner texting someone while I served your family alone?" "Yes, I remember." "Or your anniversary last year? The one he forgot but somehow remembered Katie's birthday on Facebook? That anniversary." David went quiet. I could practically hear him recalibrating his approach. "We always wondered why you stayed," he admitted finally, his lawyer voice dropping to something more human. "Mom said you were lucky to have him, but Dad and we saw how he treated you. Like his personal assistant," I supplied. "Or did you prefer when he called my teaching job a cute little hobby? That was at Easter, right after I'd won Teacher of the Year." "He was jealous," David said quietly. "You were successful at something that mattered. He was just existing." It was the most honest thing any Mitchell had ever said to me. "Then you understand why I left." "I understand. But Mom won't stop until she gets her way. You know how she is." "That sounds like a Benjamin problem, not an Abigail problem." Saturday morning brought evidence of Benjamin's financial panic. My lawyer forwarded his increasingly desperate emails with professional detachment. Benjamin had discovered he couldn't access my savings account, the one with my grandmother's $50,000 inheritance and 5 years of careful saving from teaching bonuses and summer school wages. The joint checking account told a different story. After I'd withdrawn my contributions, documented meticulously over 9 years, Benjamin was left with exactly $347.82. His deposits had been sporadic at best, usually just enough to cover his personal expenses while my teacher's salary handled mortgage, utilities, groceries, and life. His emails revealed a man discovering adulting for the first time at 40. "What's the mortgage payment? When is the water bill due? What's our Netflix password? How do I access the insurance information?" 9 years. 9 years of marriage and he didn't know our mortgage payment. Didn't know I'd been paying it mostly alone for the last 3 years after his career transition became permanent underemployment. Sarah, meanwhile, had transformed into a social media vigilante. She called Saturday evening, barely containing her glee. "I've had enough of his victim act," she announced. "Check Facebook." The album she'd created was titled Benjamin's Journey of Self-Discovery, a timeline. She'd been methodical, screenshotting texts Benjamin had sent me over the past 3 months, each one showing increasing distance and deception. Photos from mutual friends showed him at expensive restaurants on nights he'd claimed to be working late. The receipt for the Colorado retreat, $3,000 charged to our joint credit card, featured prominently. But the masterpiece was the comments section. Benjamin's high school friends had started sharing their own stories. Remember junior year when Ben was finding himself with 3 different girls at once? Didn't he pull this same spiritual awakening thing with his college girlfriend? My sister dated him briefly. He disappeared for a week with his cousin who turned out to be his ex. The pattern was clear. I wasn't Benjamin's first abandoned partner. I was just the one who'd stayed the longest. By Sunday, Patricia had called 6 more times. David had sent 2 texts apologizing for his mother. And Benjamin's emails had evolved from angry to pleading to threatening legal action for intentional infliction of emotional distress. But the most interesting message came from an unexpected source. Katie Walsh's best friend from high school, Maria. Abigail, you don't know me, but I wanted you to know Katie had no idea Benjamin was still married. She's mortified. Also, this isn't his first time pulling this stunt. My cousin dated him 5 years before you. Same story, different woman. Stay strong. 5 years before me. While we were already together. The revelation should have hurt, but instead, it freed something inside me. I wasn't special to Benjamin, not in good ways or bad. I was just the one who'd stayed long enough to make leaving inconvenient. Monday morning brought the kind of poetic justice that felt almost scripted. I was teaching my 2nd grade art class, helping 7-year-olds create self-portraits with construction paper, when my phone buzzed with a text from my lawyer. Benjamin just discovered the utility situation. His emails are colorful. Apparently, the power company had shut off service at 8 a.m. sharp when the final bill in my name came due. Benjamin, who'd never paid a utility bill in 9 years, had no idea services required actual names on accounts, credit checks and deposit payments. The gas company wanted $300 upfront. Electric needed $250. Internet and cable each required deposits because Benjamin's credit score, something else I'd managed for him, had apparently tanked during his spiritual journey spending spree. Miss Thompson, why are you smiling? Asked Emma, one of my students, paint smeared across her cheek. Sometimes good things happen to patient people, I told her, helping her cut out paper hearts for her portrait's background. During lunch, I checked my personal email to find a forward from Tom. Benjamin had posted in our neighborhood Facebook group, asking if anyone knew reasonable utility companies, complaining about predatory deposit requirements. The comments were brutal. Mrs. Chin had responded, maybe if you paid your bills instead of running off with girlfriends, companies would trust you. The mortgage situation was even better. Benjamin discovered that without my income he couldn't qualify to refinance. Without my signature he couldn't sell. The house payment was due in 2 weeks, and his $347.82 wasn't going to cover it. According to my lawyer, he tried to access my grandmother's inheritance through some bizarre legal theory that marriage meant automatic ownership of all assets. The bank manager had apparently laughed before explaining that inheritance remains separate property. Patricia refused to co-sign for anything, claiming she needed to teach him responsibility. David wouldn't lend money, citing his own family obligations. And Katie Walsh, sweet Katie who'd promised to help him find himself, had not only blocked him on all platforms but was now posting couples yoga photos with her new instructor boyfriend, #authentic love. Tuesday afternoon I was organizing art supplies when the school secretary knocked. There's a disturbance in the parking lot. A man claiming to be your husband. Through the window I watched Benjamin standing by his car, arguing with our security guard. His hair was unwashed, his clothes wrinkled, and he kept gesturing wildly toward the building. 3 mothers stood nearby, phones out, documenting everything. Jennifer Patterson, whose twin daughters were in my class, marched up to him. "Excuse me, are you supposed to be here?" "I need to see my wife," Benjamin said, loud enough that I could hear him through the closed window. "Ex-wife," Jennifer corrected. "And she's teaching. You know, working? That thing adults do." Rachel Martinez joined her. Isn't this the guy who abandoned her for some blonde from high school? It was a spiritual journey. Benjamin protested. Is that what we're calling it now? Asked Melissa Chen, Mrs. Chen's daughter-in-law. My mother-in-law says you cried on your lawn for 3 hours. Very spiritual. The security guard eventually convinced Benjamin to leave, but not before 6 parents had filmed the encounter and shared it in our school's parent WhatsApp group with captions like, "This is why we stand Miss Thompson," and the trash took itself out. That evening, Jennifer stopped by my apartment with a casserole and a business card. My husband's a divorce attorney. Better than whoever you have now. He'll destroy this man pro bono just for the entertainment value. Wednesday brought an unexpected call. Benjamin's boss, Marcus, not to be confused with Tom, these men all blur together in their mediocrity, sounded genuinely apologetic. Abigail, I'm calling as a courtesy. We had to let Benjamin go. I set down my coffee cup carefully. Oh. He missed the Henderson presentation while in Colorado. Our biggest client. Then when he returned, he told Mr. Henderson that material success was meaningless compared to spiritual enlightenment. He actually suggested our client try meditation instead of market expansion. I bit my lip to keep from laughing. That sounds like Benjamin's found himself. There's more, Marcus continued. HR discovered he'd been using sick days for what he logged as couples counseling, starting 3 months ago. But you weren't in couples counseling, were you? No, we weren't. He was meeting Katie Walsh. His co-workers have forwarded me some concerning emails where he blamed his performance issues on you. Called you controlling and emotionally abusive. Several people came forward to say they'd seen him at restaurants with another woman when he claimed to be at client dinners. The irony was perfect. Benjamin, who couldn't remember to buy milk without 3 reminders, calling me controlling. The man I'd had to guide through basic adulting like a GPS for life functioning, claiming I was abusive. His final check will be mailed to his parents' address, Marcus concluded. And Abigail, we all knew you were the reason he held it together as long as he did. Thursday arrived with the crown jewel of consequences. My attorney Linda Greenwood, hired quietly 3 months ago when Benjamin's late text started, had Benjamin served at his parents' house during their Thursday night family dinner. She'd waited for maximum impact, knowing Patricia invited their entire extended family for these weekly gatherings. The terms were straightforward. Clean split, no alimony either way. I keep my savings and apartment, he keeps the house and associated debt. Simple. Fair. Exactly what 2 adults ending a marriage should expect. Benjamin's counteroffer arrived Friday morning, and Linda actually called me laughing. You have to see this, she said. I'm sending it now. He was demanding half my inheritance because marriage is a partnership where all assets are shared. He wanted lifetime alimony because I had abandoned him during a mental health crisis, citing his spiritual journey as a medical necessity. He claimed emotional distress damages because I had maliciously sabotaged his self-discovery process. The best part was his description of events. My wife vindicatively abandoned our marital home while I was attending a therapeutic retreat for stress-related mental health issues. A therapeutic retreat, Linda repeated, still laughing. With his ex-girlfriend. For his mental health. What happens next? The judge will read this, probably have the same reaction I did, and suggest Benjamin get actual therapy. No court in Texas is giving him a penny after he abandoned you for another woman. By Friday afternoon, word had spread through our social circles. Benjamin Mitchell, who'd spent 9 years being supported by his teacher wife, was now living in his childhood bedroom unemployed and trying to sue me for abandoning him during his affair. The principal's wife, Margaret, called with an offer. I can get you a mortgage approval for your apartment. With your teaching history and that inheritance as down payment, you're golden. Let Benjamin figure out his house situation alone. As the week ended, I stood in my apartment looking at the purchase agreement Margaret had drawn up. Below, the city hummed with life. Somewhere across town, Benjamin was probably sitting in his parents' house, trying to figure out how his spiritual journey had led him back to the bedroom where he'd grown up. Katie Walsh posted another yoga photo with her new boyfriend. Patricia Mitchell complained to anyone who'd listen about her son's ungrateful wife. And I signed my name on the line that would make this apartment truly mine. Bought with my money in my name for my future. The pen felt heavy in my hand as I signed the purchase agreement, making the apartment officially mine. 3 weeks had passed since I'd walked away from Benjamin's house, my former life, and each day had brought new revelations about the man I'd married and the woman I'd been. Saturday morning arrived crisp and bright. Sarah and I had claimed our usual corner table at Brewster's Cafe, the one by the window where we could watch downtown Dallas wake up. I was telling her about my student's latest art project when her face suddenly drained of color. "Don't turn around," she whispered, gripping her coffee cup. Of course I turned around. Benjamin stood in the doorway with Patricia and a woman I didn't recognize, older, wearing a church dress and pearls, clutching a notebook like a shield. He spotted me immediately, his face shifting into an expression of practiced sorrow. They walked toward us with the determination of people on a mission. "Abigail," Benjamin began, loud enough for the entire coffee shop to hear, "I've come to ask for your forgiveness." The stranger opened her notebook, pen poised like she was about to document something important. Patricia stood behind her son, chin raised in defiance, daring me to make a scene. "Benjamin," I said calmly, "this is inappropriate. Please just hear me out." He launched into what was clearly a rehearsed speech. "I've been doing a lot of thinking. About us. About marriage. About second chances. I realize now that my journey of self-discovery was really just running from the best thing in my life." Sarah snorted into her cappuccino. "I want to work on us," he continued, his voice carrying across the now silent cafe. "I want to try counseling. Real counseling. Not the kind where..." The door chimed and everything shifted. Katie Walsh walked in with a man who could only be her yoga instructor boyfriend, tall, lean man bun that actually looked good on him. She froze when she saw Benjamin, her eyes widening with recognition and something that looked like fury. "Oh my God," she said, her voice cutting through Benjamin's monologue. "Is this the married man who lied about being separated?" She walked straight up to our table, ignoring Patricia's attempt to block her path. "Abigail, right? Honey, you're a saint for putting up with him as long as you did. This pathological liar told me you knew about us, that you supported our reconnection." The churchwoman's notebook snapped shut. She looked at Patricia with barely concealed horror. "You said he was the victim here." "This is a misunderstanding," Patricia started, but the woman was already backing away. "I don't witness lies," she said, heading for the door. "And I certainly won't be telling Pastor Williams that Benjamin deserves the congregation's support." Katie wasn't finished. 6 months, she told me, her yoga instructor boyfriend standing protectively beside her. "He'd been messaging me for 6 months before that Colorado trip. Planning, lying, telling me about his loveless marriage while you were at home doing his laundry." Benjamin's face had turned the color of overripe tomatoes. "Katie, please. Don't." She held up a hand. "I'm done with your manipulation. Abigail, I'm sorry. If I'd known the truth, I never would have." She shook her head and left with her boyfriend, but not before adding, "Get therapy, Ben. Real therapy." The entire coffee shop was watching now, phones not so subtly recording. Benjamin stood there, his grand gesture collapsed around him like a poorly built house of cards. "We should go," Patricia hissed, grabbing his arm. They left, but the damage was done. Within an hour, someone had posted the video to our neighborhood Facebook page with the caption, "Local man tries to win back wife he cheated on, gets called out by his mistress." Saturday afternoon I was organizing my closet, a luxury of space I'd never had before, when my phone buzzed with alerts from neighbors. Benjamin was in my building's parking lot with a guitar. Through my window, I watched him position himself under what he must have thought was my apartment. He was actually 2 windows off, serenading Mrs. Kumar's living room. He started playing and I recognized the opening chords immediately. Not our first dance song, not the song from our wedding, but Wonderwall. Katie's favorite song in high school according to her old Facebook posts. My neighbors had already gathered. Mr. Peterson from 3B was filming. The college kids from 2A were laughing openly. Mrs. Kumar opened her window and shouted, "Wrong apartment, Romeo." Building security arrived within minutes, followed shortly by the police after Benjamin refused to leave. I watched from above as he argued with the officers, gesturing wildly with the guitar. "It's not stalking. It's a romantic gesture. I'm trying to save my marriage." "Sir, she's filed for divorce. This is harassment." The video hit the community Facebook page within an hour. The comments were ruthless. "This is why she left him. Imagine being 40 and not knowing your wife's favorite song. Team Abigail forever. Monday's court-ordered mediation was held in a sterile conference room that smelled like old coffee and broken dreams. Benjamin arrived with a laptop and a portable projector, dressed in his best suit, the one I'd picked out for him 3 years ago. Linda leaned over to whisper. He brought visual aids. This should be good. Benjamin set up his PowerPoint with the confidence of a man who'd never been wrong about anything. The title slide read, The Case for Reconciliation, an Analysis of Emotional Abandonment. The mediator, a tired-looking woman named Janet, raised an eyebrow but said nothing. Benjamin clicked through slides about his journey of self-discovery, complete with bullet points about personal growth and spiritual awakening. He had graphs showing the emotional damage of my abandonment. He'd even included inspirational quotes about forgiveness. As you can see, he said, pointing to a pie chart, my wife's leaving interrupted crucial personal development, causing irreparable harm to my self-actualization process. Janet stopped him. Mr. Mitchell, do you understand what marriage is? Of course. It's a partnership. Then why did you leave your partner for another woman? It was a journey of. Linda opened her folder. I have 9 years of bank statements showing my client paid 70% of household expenses. Here's a birthday card where Mr. Mitchell wrote, Thanks for being my mom away from mom. Here are testimonies from 12 neighbors about Mrs. Mitchell covering for his repeated absences. She slid papers across the table with surgical precision. Here's Mr. Mitchell's work evaluation citing excessive absences. Here are credit card statements showing thousands spent on his spiritual journey from joint accounts. Here's. Enough, Janet said. Mr. Mitchell, your PowerPoint about emotional abandonment while you were literally with another woman is unique. I'm recommending the original settlement stands. During the break, I went to the water fountain in the hallway. A man approached, tall, tired-looking, something familiar about his jaw. You're Abigail? I nodded cautiously. I'm Katie's ex-husband, Robert. I wanted you to know something. He pulled out his phone showing me Facebook messages dating back 6 months. Benjamin and Katie, planning their reunion while we were both still married. Benjamin calling me his burden, saying he needed to wait for his promotion before leaving me because he needed to appear stable. He didn't get the promotion, Robert said, because he was too busy planning his escape to do his job. One message stood out. Once I get this promotion, I'll have the financial security to leave Abigail. She served her purpose. Served my purpose. Like I was a stepping stone, not a person. Thank you, I told Robert. I'm sorry you went through this too. Katie's not a bad person, he said. Just lost. And Benjamin. He's a parasite who finds lost people. I gave the messages to Linda, who added them to our filing with a smile that promised destruction. Linda tucked the Facebook messages into her folder with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just been handed a winning lottery ticket. We walked back into the mediation room where Benjamin sat slouched in his chair, his PowerPoint frozen on a slide titled, The Economics of Emotional Support. 6 months. That's how long it took from that Sunday announcement to this moment in the courthouse. 6 months of Benjamin's spiral, 6 months of my rebuilding, 6 months of discovering that the hardest part of leaving wasn't the leaving. It was believing I deserved to. The divorce papers sat on the mahogany table between us like a bridge we were both about to burn from opposite sides. I pulled out my favorite pen, the Mont Blanc my grandmother had given me for college graduation. Benjamin had borrowed it countless times, never returning it, always leaving it in random places. Today it was exactly where I'd placed it in my purse. Benjamin fumbled through his jacket pockets, then his briefcase, finally looking up at his lawyer with embarrassment. Can I borrow a pen? Of course he needed to borrow a pen. The man who'd spent 9 years borrowing my patience, my money, my dreams, needed to borrow a pen to sign away our marriage. His lawyer slid him a basic Bic, the kind you get in bulk at office supply stores. Benjamin signed his name with the borrowed pen, pressing too hard like he always did when he was angry, leaving indentations on the pages beneath. I signed with smooth, deliberate strokes, my name flowing across the paper like water finding its way home. As we gathered our things, Benjamin made one last attempt. He waited until his lawyer had stepped away, until Linda was packing her briefcase, until it was just us by the elevator. Abby, he said, using that soft voice he'd perfected for apologies he didn't mean. We could try again. I know who I am now. I know what I lost. I looked at him, really looked at him, for the last time as his wife. His hair was thinner, his clothes ill-fitting from stress weight loss, his eyes holding that desperate gleam of someone who'd gambled everything and lost. Standing there in his borrowed suit confidence and borrowed pen signature, he was exactly who he'd always been. Someone who existed only in relation to what others could provide him. Benjamin, I said, my voice carrying no anger, no satisfaction, just simple truth. You did find yourself. This is who you are. And I've found who I am without you. The elevator arrived with a soft ding. I stepped in alone, leaving him in the hallway still holding someone else's pen. My apartment had transformed in 6 months from emergency shelter to actual home. Books lined shelves Benjamin would have called cluttered, their spines creating a rainbow of stories he'd never asked about. Art-covered walls he would have deemed impractical, pieces I'd collected from students over the years, paintings from local artists at street fairs he'd thought were wastes of money. The kitchen perpetually smelled like fresh bread because I'd returned to baking without timeline or obligation. Sunday breads because I wanted them, not because Sunday dinner required them. Experimental flavors Benjamin would have called weird. Lavender honey, rosemary olive, chocolate cherry. Cooling on racks he would have said took up too much counter space. The spare room which Benjamin had claimed for a home gym that collected dust, then an office where he'd played video games, had become my studio. North-facing light streamed through windows I'd cleared of his abandoned exercise equipment. Canvases leaned against walls, works in progress that didn't need to justify their existence or explain their purpose. I'd started painting again 3 months after the divorce began. My hands had trembled holding brushes that felt foreign after years of absence. The first painting was terrible, muddy colors and uncertain strokes. But it was mine. The second was better. By the 10th, I'd remembered who I was before I'd learned to shrink myself into wife-shaped spaces. My teacher's salary, freed from supporting Benjamin's craft beer obsession, his gaming subscriptions, his gym memberships he never used, stretched in ways that felt magical. I could afford good groceries. I could save actual money. I could travel. Thanksgiving in Paris with Lisa wasn't planned. She called one day and said, "Let's go," and for the first time in a decade I could just say yes. We stayed in a tiny apartment in Montmartre, climbed the Eiffel Tower in the rain, ate croissants that made us question every breakfast we'd ever had. I sent Sarah a postcard from a cafe where Hemingway used to write, "Found myself." She was here all along. The school fundraiser came in February, 7 months after my world had rearranged itself. I was manning the art auction table, explaining my students' projects to parents, when a man approached with 2 cups of coffee. "Mrs. Mitchell?" he asked. "Miss Thompson," I corrected, the name still feeling new and old simultaneously. "Right, sorry. I'm James Turner. Lily's dad. She talks about you constantly." He offered me one of the coffees. "I remember you mentioned loving lavender lattes at the parent conference. They had one at the coffee truck." I stared at the cup. He'd remembered an offhand comment from 3 months ago about coffee preference. Benjamin hadn't remembered my coffee order after 9 years. James was widowed, I learned. His wife had passed 2 years prior from cancer, leaving him to navigate raising a 7-year-old daughter alone. He was a graphic designer who worked from home, allowing him to be present for Lily in ways that mattered. "She comes home glowing from your class," he said, watching Lily show other parents around the art display. "Yesterday she spent 3 hours painting because Thompson says art comes from our feelings. You've given her a way to process everything." We talked until the fundraiser ended. He listened to my stories without interrupting, laughed at actual jokes rather than the self-deprecating comments I'd trained myself to make, asked questions that showed he was paying attention. "Would you like to get coffee sometime?" he asked as we cleaned up. "When you're not being ambushed with one you didn't ask for?" We took it slow. Coffee became lunch, became dinner, became weekend trips to art museums with Lily, who'd appointed herself matchmaker with 7-year-old subtlety. "Miss Thompson," she announced one Saturday at the Botanical Gardens. "My dad thinks you're pretty. And smart. And nice. He said so to Grandma." James turned red. I laughed, really laughed, for the first time in so long it felt foreign. A year after that Sunday announcement, life had settled into rhythms I'd chosen rather than inherited. Sarah forwarded me a Facebook post from Patricia Mitchell asking for prayers for Benjamin, living in their basement, struggling to find his purpose after a traumatic abandonment. Katie Walsh was engaged to her yoga instructor, flooding Instagram with posts about authentic love with someone who honors truth and commitment. Their wedding hashtag was #NamasteForever. Me. I was sitting in my apartment on a Sunday afternoon, grading papers where students had written essays about their heroes. 3 had chosen their art teacher. James was in my kitchen making his mother's secret recipe pasta sauce, filling my space with smells that meant comfort without obligation. Lisa was texting from Dallas about our summer trip to Greece. Something we could actually plan now. Benjamin had been right about one thing. We both needed to find ourselves. He found a 40-year-old man who needed others to prop up his existence, who couldn't function without someone managing his life, who mistook dependency for love. I found a woman who could stand alone so strongly that when someone stood beside her, it was by choice, not necessity. A woman whose life was full of art and travel and students who saw her as heroic. A woman who baked bread because she wanted to, not because anyone expected it. Turns out I wasn't the one who stayed too long. I was the one who got away. From a life that was never really mine, to a life that was entirely my own. If this story of calculated revenge had you rooting for Abigail from start to finish, hit that like button right now. My favorite part was when Benjamin tried to serenade the wrong apartment window with Katie's favorite song instead of his wife's. What was your favorite moment of poetic justice? Drop it in the comments below. Don't miss more gripping stories like this. Subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss an upload.